Welcome to J Matters. I'm Marty Gold, editor of the J.ca. I'm joined by our publisher, Ron East. As you see, Quds Day in Toronto, that is footage of the march, the event, and there's very few media on the ground, but one of the people that was on the ground, Ron East,
Yes.
to discuss Quds Day in Toronto, and there's very broad implications. It was just, fortunate that you were able to arrange to be able to go there, and in fact, there's some concern about the nature of the response of the community at large to the kinds of activities that were taking place throughout downtown Toronto last Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marty. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to be at the ground level, at level zero, so to speak, of Quds this past weekend. I was fortunate enough to make connections with some grassroots people in Toronto who strongly urged me to come out and participate and really see what Quds Day was all about. And I have to tell you, it was an eye-opener for me.
Well, the biggest concern to me, coming from the background that I have and that I shared with at the hand of your father in terms of community development and community relations, is that the people, the good people of Toronto, are being overwhelmed by how this is put together far beyond the borders of Canada. There's a lot of outside hands involved in this.
Quds Day is a state-sponsored, state-organized day of protest, which is international in scope.
The signs are all the same.
It is financed, managed, and run by the Iranian regime straight out of Iran. If you look at the Quds Day protests in London, Berlin, Toronto, Paris, Melbourne, I can go on and on and on, you'll see that the signs are extremely familiar and extremely the same. The messaging is the same. The way that the protest is organized is the same. The disproportionate number of women and children to males is something that you will notice in every one of these protests, and it's for a reason. It makes good television, it's good propaganda, and it ensures that the police and law enforcement won't dare to try and disrupt or shut down a protest that has hundreds of women and children involved in it. It does not make for good optics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this type of events and this type of hate fest count on, is the optics that we would present.
It takes advantage of the nature of Canadian laws and freedoms, because there's a lot of this activity is pushing the limit in terms of what I don't even know how to explain this. I'm seeing our values tested, our institutions being tested, and the community's under-resourced. And I don't think a lot of our institutions, we know from our own talks, a lot of them, they don't get what's going on.
Our forefathers and foremothers, for that matter, who put the constitutions together, all of our freedoms together to allow us to live in this Judeo-Christian democracy in the Western society, didn't sit and imagine that one day a group of hundreds and hundreds of people who hate our way of life, who hate our democracy, who hate our Judeo-Christian values, would freely be marching through the streets of Canada's largest city, not only unattested, but aided and abetted by the police, who are simply handcuffed. Because, like I said again, the optics of the police trying to go into the middle of this kind of a hate fest and start to try and arrest women and children. The optics that would send worldwide would be something that no politician wants to have on their hands. And therefore, it's
police force.
Yeah, and therefore it's easier to allow them to march through the streets than to actually do anything effective to send a clear message that when it comes to Canada, when it comes to Toronto, when it comes to our values and our ways of life, we do not tolerate this kind of hate in a multicultural society. And unfortunately, this message that we're sending to all these people is not only do we tolerate it, but we welcome it and we expect it, and it's just part of living in a democratic society. And that's the scary part, that it shouldn't be part of living in a democratic society. Not this type of a hate fest that calls for the eradication of Israel, that holds flags of Hezbollah, that promotes and worships the Ayatollahs in Iran.
That part of it, that was so open. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at that in certain regions of the world, but for that kind of sentiment to be expressed openly in North America, it was really startling to me.
It was startling to me as well, that this kind of open propaganda and open expression of admiration and support for the Iranian regime and what it stands for. A regime that is considered by many in the Western world to be a regime that funds terrorism, a regime that's responsible for a lot of the carnage that we've seen in the Middle East and around the world. And yet in Toronto on a Saturday afternoon, downtown, right on the footsteps of the courthouse, across from the American embassy, it appears that it's quite legitimate to have a worship fest for the Iranian regime. You know, and the funny part, or the sad part, I guess, in it all is that some of the people participating, those people from the LGBTQ plus community were holding signs in support of Quds Day, don't realize that if the people who are spouting this kind of hate get their way, they would be the first people thrown off the 10-story building that they were just protesting in front of. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous that people can be led astray like sheep like that.
But this is by the intersectional, convergence that is settled on themes about colonialism, being against Western values, the notion that you have, the moral relativism, that all cultures, all values are equal. That's just plainly not apparent when it comes to the right of gay people, trans people to protest in our society compared to the society they're marching alongside of that wants their values to be the world standard. It's just bizarre.
Apartheid means a state that separates, that treats people differently based on their race or religion. So isn't Israel there?
There are even Arabs that sit in the Knesset in Israel. So I'm trying to understand.
But those must be house Negroes, house Arabs.
Oh, really?
Really? Yeah. You know that?
You know, I'm glad you said that and I didn't. That sounds very racist to me, sir. What would happen to a gay couple in Palestine, sir?
What?
What would happen to a gay couple in Gaza?
Executed according to Islamic law. Islam doesn't endorse gayism. Islam doesn't endorse homosexuality.
I see. Okay, so would you like to see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point it will. You know, because we have families, we are making babies. You're not. Your population is going down the slum.
That's
Right?
Yeah.
And by 2060, according to Pew Research Institute, your research, by 2060, Muslims will be the biggest religious group the world over.
Right.
What are you going to do then?
Actually,
to oppose Sharia is even then?
I don't want to see people being executed for their sexual orientation.
Okay, why?
Why would you want that, sir?
No. Why would you not want people like, it's because of these abnormal sexual orientations that your population is going down the slump as we are growing everywhere. Right? If you don't abide by Islamic law in a Muslim country, you get prosecuted. I'm not saying executed, you get prosecuted.
But sir, we have Canadian law here, and you say that you want Sharia law to displace Canadian law. That doesn't sound very respectful.
But in majority, you wouldn't have any other option, my friend.
I have met several Muslims who left Islamic nations and are horrified to see those elements of those countries following them over to Canada and the United States. What would you say to them? Muslims that want to live a secular lifestyle.
You should go to your queen and tell her to change the laws.
Change the laws to what, sir? To Sharia law?
No, change the laws to not allow any more Muslims to come to Canada. Like if you are bothered by Muslims, because we owe our allegiance and our loyalty first and foremost to our religion, not to the queen, to be honest.
I haven't seen anyone step forward that participated in that event in the Al-Quds March say, oh no, that's we would never associate with people that said such things, that not just said such things, but admitted that the Canadian way of life, the Canadian Charter of Rights, this is all going to be out the window when we get our way.
Yeah, I mean this,
and it's a demographics bomb.
I mean, this gentleman was very forthcoming and very honest about how he feels and what Quds Day means to the vast majority who were there. It is a demographic issue. I've said from the get-go that this was a demographic issue, and he came out quite clearly and mentioned that from a demographic perspective, they're having more children. They're the largest immigration or migration population into the Western civilizations we know it right now. And he's indeed correct, unless something is done, unless things somehow change. He's right, by 2060, maybe a little bit later, maybe a little before that, they will be the majority as far as population and demographic and religion. And there's a lot of questions that we need to ask ourselves as a Judeo-Christian society, leading up to that moment, which will eventually.
All right. So, why are you here today? So when Imam Khomeini declared the day of Quds, he declared it for standing up against Zionism and standing up for the people of Palestine, who are one of the ones, who are of the people experiencing of the most harshest forms of violence, because it comes with colonialism, apartheid, but also to stand for all oppressed people of the world. Is there anything you want to say to the people of Canada and the Canadian government?
The Canadian government is a white supremacist, racist colonial project, and when they have that in their upbringing, when that is what Canada is based on, of course they are contributing monetarily and in other ways to the Zionist project as well, which is also another form of colonialism. So ultimately, Canada, we need to, I have nothing to say to Canada, but to the people who are on this land, we need to open our eyes and we need to start to read and educate ourselves about what is going on and what is happening and how we are contributing to it, whether it be here or overseas, because these governments are all in coherence with one another. And so, again, Canada is a white supremacist, colonial, racist project, as is Israel, as is the state of Israel.
But what you heard on the ground in Toronto was that there's really there's not just no awareness of what's actually being said and propagated at these kinds of events, whether it's a Nakba Day or a Quds Day, for two examples, but that certainly there's no organization on the ground that's even thinking about how to deal with this.
I believe that part of the problem is that this has been seen for quite a long time
as a Jewish problem,
as a Zionist,
yeah,
pro-Israel Jewish problem, and not a Canadian problem, and therefore the average Canadian didn't see the need to get involved or to try to learn about it, to educate themselves about it. And what I've discovered, and what I've learned from being on ground zero, is that this is a Canadian problem. This is a direct attack. Quds Day is a direct attack on everything that we cherish and we believe in and we love. Understand that this is not a Jewish versus a Palestinian, Israeli versus Palestinian, Jewish versus Muslim issue. This is a greater issue between extreme Islam and what it perpetuates and its wishes for what type of a society we should have even within Canada, and the rest of us, the rest of those of us who believe in our Judeo-Christian way of life, moderate Muslims, Christians, and Jews together. This is a threat to everybody.
Really need to take a deeper look at what's going on. We'll be back with another J Matters to go take a deeper dive into what forces are behind these kinds of things and what you can do to prepare yourself, to prepare your community to make sure that you don't get overtaken.
Absolutely, Marty. So on behalf of the J.ca, I'm Ron East.
I'm Marty Gold, and we'll be seeing you again sometime soon at J Matters. Make sure to check out the website for the latest news from Canada and all over involving Jews, Israel, and other important topics. The J.ca brings you top-notch Jewish journalism and stories analysis that's unmatched anywhere else. If you like our stories, if you like our advocacy, if you like the work that we're doing, then by all means, follow us on Twitter, go to our Facebook page, check out the website, the J.ca, and we need your support to be able to expand this work, take it across Canada, liaise with communities, and be able to dig out the stories that you need to know about. So your support is vital, and we appreciate everybody who stepped forward that helps us bring this kind of service to the community with the J.ca.